Hi, I'm Carl Stabe of Domino Connection, and today we have Maria Duron, right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Duron. Duron.
Duron.
hmm
Of Buzz to Bucks, and she is fantastic. We have a mutual friend, and that's how we met. And isn't that how most relationships are built, Maria?
They are a friend of a friend. Those are the best kinds of relationships.
Yes. So today I'm a big believer in relationships and building your business through relationships. And when we got connected, I found out about you in our research. Yeah, I really like what you have to say, and you do. Um, but I always like to start with the personality. Who you are, and, what has kind of brought you to where you are today.
Sure. Sure. And really, it's just building and developing and believing in relationships. I'm an Air Force brat. So part of what I did in growing up is being able to listen to people and communicate quickly because a lot of times as a child of an Air Force, actually active duty Air Force then, it was really busy when we'd change, we'd switch, somewhere through the school year, you're having to make friends where everybody else may already have established relationships. So a lot of times it was just listening and being able to know what people are communicating, what they're talking, being able to connect with people, with groups. And I did that at a very young age, carried that through my college career and now through my professional career. And it's always served me well. I always find that if you stop and listen to people, you can learn something from everyone.
So that you bring up a good point. Listening, sometimes it's not easy to do because you've got a lot of little head things going on. How do you really focus on people and make sure you are listening?
I think part of that is truly understanding what they're saying. I know it's hard for me too because I love to engage and I'm very active and very almost not dramatic, but I show outwardly. As you can see, I speak with my hands, with my eyes, with my voice tone. And so when I'm engaged in conversation with somebody, it's sometimes really difficult for me to hold off saying something next. But if I really focus on what is this person really saying, what's my next question that I can ask this person, and what is it that I can learn from this person? I think when you slow down and you really listen to somebody, they reveal a lot of information to you, but slowing down all of your natural tendencies is one of the toughest things that you can do as a communicator.
Yeah. So if you really, if you look at the conversations I've had in the past week or two, people love to talk. People love to share their ideas. And you said, questions are finding that next question. How do you really, decide how to ask that question?
I think a long time ago, and this was, I can't even remember exactly when it was in my college career, somebody taught me an acronym, which is, you've heard of the acronym FORD, friends, occupation, recreation, and discover what their desire is. And if you use that in conversation, a lot of times that helps you provide a little outline or a guidepost so that you can make sure that you're moving a conversation along and really getting to know somebody. But then later in college, I found actually another acronym that has served me well, which is fabulous, and it's spelled incorrectly, but it's the way I remember it, which is friends, activities, business, and what they're involved in, what makes them unique, what their loves are, occupation, and then also, what sports, because a lot of people will talk about sports and service projects and such. So I utilize that to help me in making sure that I'm slowing down enough to really get to know the person that's in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you make a good point, like when you're trying to connect in business, you have to find out what they like and what they don't like, how they like to be treated, how they don't like to be treated.
Sure, our personality styles are so different, and that is why I like the acronyms. Not because it's canned. I like it because then that's something I don't have to think about and I don't have to create while we're in conversation. So that means I don't have to focus on that while you're talking. I can really focus on what you're saying, and I just know that that acronym sits out there. And when there comes to a point in the conversation where it feels like it needs another question or I want to learn more, I can always just pull from that acronym. So it's a nice outline.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And we need those hooks, those reminders
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So, what is one tip that you can get people, talking about your business? And and that's why we're in business, to get people talking about us. How do you do that? How do you get people excited about that?
To talk about my business, you mean, or?
Well, their business in general. Like, how do you help them through that process of getting other people to talk about them?
Sure. Well, I think part of that, though, Carl, is still listening. I think when you earn the right to be heard, people are more than happy to talk about your business. And when I say earn the right to be heard, is we were taught at a very young age to reciprocate. If somebody says something kind to you, most of our parents, clergy, school teachers have always taught us, somebody says something nice, you do something nice in return or say something nice. I mean, that law or that act of reciprocation has been inground into us. So I feel like if you truly and genuinely listen to somebody, find out about them and their needs and try to help them, that reciprocation is there naturally. It's not something that you have to build, grow, or develop in someone. They just have that in them. If they feel that towards you, they do the same thing. So it is about genuine, transparent, and authentic connection with someone, because you can't fake that. If you just act like, okay, I'm kind of sort of listening to you now, I'm on to my stuff, people feel that. We feel when somebody's being too salesy, and we reject that. We move on from it. You see it at chamber mixers all the time. If somebody walks into the room and that's the way they are, people disperse and they go to the edges and the corners of the room rather than talking to someone who is that way. But when somebody's genuinely listening, we very rarely come across people who genuinely listen. So if you want to market your business, listen to people. And the best place to do that are in spaces where your target market is, either your target audience or people who serve your target audience and influence them. Then you can do no wrong, because listening to those groups really furthers your business along anyway, because it's the relationships you need.
Yeah. 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 And, I find that listening also allows me to take the focus off of myself and onto them. And, you know, in the larger picture, to me, that's always easier to do instead of getting caught up in, my own insecurities and trying to talk too much. If I just focus on them, they feel so much more loved and appreciated.
They do. In fact, I just came from a conference, the New Media Conference in Las Vegas, and I loved what they taught during the beginning session, which was, what is your one thing that you want from this conference? We're going to spend 3 days together. And now go out and ask everybody you come in contact with at this conference, what's your one thing that I could help you with? And I made the best connections in the lunch line, because instead of me being preoccupied with what am I going to eat or what do I want to say about my business, the question was, well, you're here at the conference. What's your one thing I could help you with at the conference? And that was so helpful, because the relationships, they're lifelong now, that have been formed just because you hear that. A few hours later, you come across what it is they need, their one thing, you reconnect back with them, and there you are helping people, which is what I enjoy doing anyway.
Yeah, yeah. So, as you're building up these relationships and you're listening to people, how do you deepen them? How do you make sure that you stay in contact with people and you're able to keep listening to them?
I think part of that is remembering that, we definitely are immediate in that if we're out of sight, we're out of mind. So what are ways that you can stay top of mind with somebody? And there's several ways to do that. It's number one, knowing what their needs are and then going back and circling back to fulfill those needs. If they had an interest, something to follow up with, let's say, for example, at this conference, somebody said, Marie, I'm interested in this report, then the best thing I can do is to email them on my return to make sure and say, hey, I remembered our conversation and here's that report we talked about. That's a great way to stay in relationship. The same thing with handwritten thank you cards, emails. Really, it's finding out the best way that they communicate and then putting tools and systems in place so that you stay in constant connection with them. That doesn't mean every 2 weeks that you're spamming them and saying, hey, I'm ready to do business with you. But it could be in 2 weeks' time they're going to receive an email from you, or they're going to receive something as far as a Facebook post that, hey, you had this question about this and I answered it here. So in some way you're still making that connection. And I do encourage at least every 14 to 21 days to have some sort of connecting tool to connect, even if it's an ancillary way to connect, just so that they're reminded of who you are, and they are also reminded that you're there to help them.
It's funny you say that with Facebook, but I also think Twitter's good for that because it's so quick, and if they check their stream, they see that too. So yeah, we don't have to do just email or just Facebook. There's a lot of different tools out there that help us.
Sure, there are lots of connection points. I mean, you think of all the social networks. If that's the channel where your contact is at, absolutely. That quick smiley on Twitter could be just the connection you need for that couple of weeks. That's okay.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times people they do drop off the radar, and you don't contact them every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but maybe it's 2 3 months. But if that connection was positive enough, they'll want to reconnect with you.
They absolutely will. And I think it's important to remember, I mean, Dale Carnegie in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, to me, it's just still tried and true practices. Yeah, and one is remember their name. When you can remember their name, even if you haven't seen them for a whole year, I go to a conference, I haven't seen anybody for a year, and then all of a sudden we see each other in the hallway, in the exhibit hall, and I say, hey, Roy, he's amazed and excited that I remembered his name. And that's all it takes to make the connection personal again, is to remember the name. Or you might remember, hey, Roy, I remember your daughter was going to have a piano recital. How did that go? When you can remember something like that, people, they remember you. It stands out because not many people can do that.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
do that. They can do that, I should say. They just don't do it.
So, give me one tip that you share with your clients that really, helps get people excited about, that next contact, that next email, the next Facebook post that you do.
It is a handwritten thank you note. It is. I mean, there is nothing else like it. 97% of people do not say thank you or write a thank you note. Of the 3% that do, 80% will send it in an email thank you. You want to stand out above and beyond everybody else? A handwritten thank you note makes all the difference in the world. And so I tell clients it doesn't mean I need 200 contacts, and so therefore now I need to write 200 thank you notes, and I'm going to have writer's cramp because of doing this. It's about the quality connections. I would rather you have 6 great connections, even from a conference, that you have deepened the relationship with, that you can write a handwritten thank you note, because they'll open the doors to meet many other people. Being able to borrow from somebody else's credibility and they introduce you into their sphere of influence is powerful. And I see that much more helpful to someone and time efficient than anything else.
Even if your handwriting's sloppy?
Even if your handwriting is sloppy, I say 2 or 3 sentences. There's nothing wrong with that. And I do, when I go to conferences, I actually bring greeting cards or actually cards with my name on it, so business and everything, logo on it. But I bring it, the envelope's already stamped, everything. There is nothing more amazing to somebody when they come back from a conference and they call me and say, Maria, your card was waiting for me after the conference. So I don't even wait till I'm on the plane.
That's a great tip, having that from at a conference. That's so smart. Yeah. Never thought about that.
It doesn't have to be a bunch. Just I do 5 a day, and that has served me well. In fact, it was Mary Kay Ash who said if you would send, and she's very much more aggressive, and she said 10 thank you notes a day. But me, I do 5 a day, and that has made all the difference in my business and my outlook. Because when you focus on what you're most grateful for, you're just in the right frame of mind to take on more to be grateful for.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Okay, this is my toughest question that I ask everybody.
Sure.
And has nothing to do with, well, it has a lot to do with business, but most of it's personal. What's the secret to happiness?
I think the secret to happiness is finding something to be grateful for every single day, and knowing what you're most grateful for. So I say that because that has made a remarkable change in my business. I've been in business for myself. I've been in business for a long time, but by myself and for myself for 8 years. And I would have to say the last 6 years have been most successful because every single day I write down the 5 things I'm most grateful for. Now, everybody on Facebook knows me as the 5 gratitude lady. Because I write it on Facebook. I mean, it could be I'm grateful for picking up dirty laundry of children because I'm glad to have a house full of children. It could be I'm grateful for hearing my puppy snore. So it could be small. I think a lot of times we look for grandiose things to be grateful for. I'm grateful for I got my degree. Something huge, and it doesn't have to wait for that. It could just be grateful that I was able to talk to Carl today and we were able to make our Skype work together. It could be just that, and those are good things to be grateful for. I think if you do that, I've seen it make remarkable changes in my life and others who have put it into practice consistently.
No, that's a great tip. I like that. Okay, so as we wrap this up, I love the postcard idea, and I too do the gratitude. I do 3 a day. Five a day is really testing yourself there. But I love that idea because it's, to me, we have to have, as any business owner, you have to have a positive outlook.
Yeah.
You can't go into the day thinking negative because you're going to head towards that negative direction. If you don't, you're going to go down instead of up. So like anything, you got to work on that mindset. Yeah. Okay. So you've been in business for yourself for 8 years. What is one tip that you can give people out there who, really want to get their business jumpstart in 2013 and really get it moving? What do you say to them? What is that one thing?
I think the one thing, other than the 5 daily gratitudes and thank you notes, is to know what you're aiming for. You really do need to know what your goals are. And when I say goals, the most effective thing that I do every year is I'll write down what my 7 goals are and then the 7 steps for each goal to make that goal happen. So you back it up, and what do you need to do to make that goal inevitable? I learned that actually from a bank president of mine who serves on my personal board of directors, and that's something that also 6 years ago I started, was just talking to people who have the skill set that I don't have or that I might be blindsided to in my business, who could just provide me advice, and they became my personal board of directors. They don't have an economic stake in my business at all. So it's definitely advisory, but they are so wonderful to sit and visit with because they see things that I don't see. And the number one thing that they all said collectively that worked is to make sure that you have your goals. You not only write down your goals, but you step out. What are the steps that make those inevitable?
I like that. Can you talk a little bit about how you formed your advisory board and what do they get back in return? And, how does that work as their time for helping you?
It was Carl, it was actually the scariest thing I've ever done because here's a bank president. I remember when I approached him, he has 18 branches that he's responsible for, and he's in the top 20 banks listed by Entrepreneur Magazine. But I knew him in town, did no business with him. I don't bank with him. And so I approached him, and I just walked in. We knew each other through mutual friends. I sat down and I asked him a question saying, if I needed assistance in my business and advice, would you be willing to provide that? I'm putting together a board of directors, and I would love if you could do that. I know you're a busy man, but would you have time? And he was floored. First of all, he was grateful. He was so thankful to be asked by a small business owner. That's what he loved, working with and helping and making a difference in the lives of small business owners. So he said he would love to. In fact, he said, I offer you my conference room before we get started. I use personality type testing that I provide to all my employees whenever I'm looking at placement for branch presidents and managers and such. So he said, I want you to go through that because I want us to be able to talk about your personality typing and the results of that when we get together with your personal board of advisors. And is there anybody else I could help you ask? And so there was an accountant that I was interested in asking. He helped me with that ask. And then I actually on my own went to a Chamber of Commerce exec and to an oil and gas person, a realtor, and then an insurance lady I knew that has been very successful in her business. And they became a part of my board, and we met in his conference room. Since then, we've all gotten busy, and that was many years ago, but we still, on a quarterly basis, at least over the phone, and when we can, it's now almost every 6 months, we'll go to lunch together, and all meet. We actually meet 2 hours in his conference room before lunch, and then we go off to lunch and kind of carry on the conversation. But they've all become close contacts, and they've all done business together. So it's turned from my advisory board to almost this close-knit networking group. And it turned out to be 10 people, and we still lovingly call ourselves the Circle of 10, that we get together and just hash out ideas. We've even brought in conference speakers together. So we've done a lot of fun things, but that's where it started. And it was a challenge I read in a book that said, try to put your personal board of advisors together. And I have to tell you, I can't tell you how many times I talked myself out of going to ask him in the parking lot of the bank.
That's great. That's great. I love that story. What book did you read that in? Do you remember?
Yes, it was actually, it's Ivan Meisner. He is the head of BNI, Business Network International, and the book was called Referral by Design. And he recommended there, ask somebody to be on your personal board of advisors, and ask the person that scares you the most. And I thought, well, who wouldn't scare me the most as a small business owner who is really more on the passionate side than I am the number side, but then a bank president. I thought I'll ask him because that's the area I would get blindsided at. And but again, it took me weeks, maybe even, I would say even a couple of months. There's a few times I sat in that parking lot and then drove away.
But now you're so glad you did.
I am so glad I did. It was the best thing, but it's the hardest thing when I talk to clients for them to do. I have many clients who will walk away and not ask, even their best client. They're scared to ask them, and I tell them when you make the decision to finally go forth and just ask, you'll be surprised at the response. I mean, I never expected that response from him, ever.
That's fantastic. Well, this has been great. I know my audience is going to love it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Carl. I appreciate you asking. I'm glad to connect with you. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm available by email, phone, Facebook.
Great, great.